You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the first installment of Straight to the Extra Point for the 2020 NFL calendar, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your March 15th, 2020 edition, your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here from the Niagara region. Follow the podcast on Twitter at ArmchairGMPod. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/ArmchairGMsNetwork. Listen to us live on Spreaker.com or the free Spreaker app by searching the Armchair GMs. As well, we're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Stitcher Radio. So wherever it's most convenient for you to listen to us, we're on all those different platforms for you. And as always, I'm one of your hosts of Straight to the Extra Point, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter at Capootz13 with a Canadian Z. And I'm pleased to be joined on for the new season of the NFL with my co-host for all things NFL, Miklos. You can follow him on Twitter at Miklos_McMaster, former OUA athlete for the Waterloo Warriors. And Miklos, it is the start of the 2020 NFL calendar. We don't know what's going on with, obviously, a lot of things going on in the sporting world with leagues being shut down with the coronavirus and everything. But we don't know how that's going to affect the NFL calendar, and that will go on right now as scheduled, starting tomorrow, which is Monday. We're recording this on Sunday. Monday is the beginning of the so-called tampering, and then Wednesday is NFL free agency. So what are you thinking about this whole situation, and if you think the NFL is going to continue on with the calendar year as is, with no games and such being played for a very long time?
Well, as always, it's great to be here, Cappy. So happy to be back on the podcast and so excited that we're about to start the new NFL season. As for this whole coronavirus thing, obviously we've seen the NBA, NHL, and all the other leagues suspend their seasons. I think right now nothing really requires the NFL to take steps like that. I mean, they had the combine that went well without a hitch, and I think I've heard some rumblings about the draft maybe not happening as a big event as previously, but I believe it will still go as scheduled because the league, I imagine, won't want to adjust their schedule as much or cause any disruptions to players getting to their teams and everything, as that is still a long ways away, and there just might be some minor tweaks up until that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because the other leagues are still playing at this point. The NFL, their calendar starts, but, I mean, the only thing that I could see being affected that we were talking about, in our pre-show prep here was about the NFL draft, and the only thing that we could see is possibly, I think they've already announced that the NFL draft is being moved. If they haven't, it's almost a done deal that it's being moved, I believe, to New York, and they're not going to have any fans in the arena for it, and it's just kind of, I don't even know if they're going to have all the players there, but regardless, the draft's still going to go on, but it's just not going to be the spectacle that we expect every year. But I think if the NFL draft is the only thing that the NFL loses out on, I think they made out pretty well here, considering, March Madness was canceled completely. The NHL and NBA seasons are, basically stopped at almost near playoff time, and the MLB was about to start up with games. They're in spring training right now. So I think the NFL is kind of just, counting their blessings here, as far as that this didn't happen during their so-called calendar season where games were being played or OTAs had started, or the preseason was about to go underway. So I think the NFL kind of got lucky with this one here. So I think if they lose out on the draft, it's not the biggest it's not the biggest worry that they could have had.
I mean, considering everything that's happening this year, the NFL as a league, yet again, the Shield is going to show why they're such a dominant league. They even get the luck breaking their way as well. Because as you said, the draft, I don't think that's that big of a deal if that breaks that way. But all these leagues are having major implications to their seasons with these disruptions. And not only that, as we're going to talk about later, the NFL just signed their new CBA, so they don't even have that hanging over their heads. They're going to be rolling ahead as scheduled whenever the preseason starts in August.
Yep, exactly. So what we're going to discuss on the show today is obviously, as Miklos just mentioned, we're going to discuss the brand new CBA that luckily enough for us, this morning was reached, the day of recording here, so we get to talk about that. We're going to discuss free agency and the franchise tags that have already happened, and as well as our predictions on where we think some of the top free agents are going to go. NFL or the free agency is scheduled for Wednesday. We don't know if it's going to be delayed or anything like that. But then we're also got some betting odds for the quarterback carousel for. I believe the website is called VegasInsider.com is what we're using for the prop odds for where these quarterbacks will end up. It's a very interesting quarterback class this year. And then we'll just briefly go over the Super Bowl, as well as our last show of the 2019-20 season was our Super Bowl prediction show. So we'll just quickly touch up on what we thought of the Super Bowl and what we can remember from it, because it seems so long ago, as we were saying a few days ago. It feels like it's almost a half a year ago that game happened, but we'll do our best with that, and also go over any other relevant news that's going on for transactions or anything else in the world of the NFL. So with that being said, Miklos, let's quickly get it over with here before we forget it anymore and it becomes more of a distant memory here. The Super Bowl between the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. We had a great preview show for that with all the great betting odds and prop bets, ridiculous prop bets. I still didn't go back and see which ones happened or which ones didn't, but it was a fun show nonetheless. But the Kansas City Chiefs end up knocking off the San Francisco 49ers 31-20 in the Super Bowl. And in a nutshell, Miklos, from what you can remember and with your analysis, what did you think of this Super Bowl, and did it live up to the expectations that everybody was putting on it?
Well, I mean, I feel like the one good thing for football has been, I know most casual fans are not going to agree with this, because the Rams Patriots Super Bowl, for all people who are not proponents of very good defense, thought was a boring Super Bowl. But the Super Bowl in the past decade has been an incredible game, and I think this one as well also fit in that same mold. It ended up being a high scoring game, 31-20. There was lots of points being scored, and a wicked finish to the end of the game. There was some good defensive plays, good offensive plays all around. So overall, I think it was a great game. I stick with my prediction that defense wins championships. It just so happens that it was the Kansas City defense that came out big in this game. I think San Francisco 49ers defense did exactly what you expected them to do. They picked off Patrick Mahomes twice in the game, which was incredible. They held them to 10 points in the first half, that explosive Kansas City offense. And really, other than the fourth quarter when they started making some ridiculous plays, that's the only time they let Kansas City's offense get going. And really, it's San Francisco's offense that got buried, because really, based on the plays that were happening the whole game, getting those interceptions, like they weren't getting the points off the turnovers. If their offense had got rolling, that game would have gone out of reach for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, even if they had their incredible heroics. Like you turn those interceptions into touchdowns instead of field goals, and we're talking about a different ball game here.
And if I can just mention, people understand my fandom for the Atlanta Falcons, and I try to talk unbiasedly as much as possible on this podcast, and I rip them apart probably more than any other team. But, to see Kyle Shanahan do that again, it just brought back flashbacks, and I'm just happy that it didn't happen with my team this time. Honestly, I have to put a lot of the blame on Kyle Shanahan here. It's like you go through the biggest Super Bowl collapse in NFL history less than 3 years ago. You're in almost the same spot. It's not quite a 28-3 lead, but it's a big lead going into the fourth quarter. Kansas City scores 21 unanswered points, wins this game 31-21, and I can't help to just think to myself that, wow, Kyle Shanahan really is just over his head in these big-time moments where instead of playing smart and, just doing what you need to do to win. He's throwing the ball with 7 minutes left when you're still up by 2 scores, allowing Kansas City to get back in this game. Again, like you said, as a defensive guy, I give you props, but the Kansas City's defense did step up here, and they made some plays. But at the same time, San Francisco, they had the game won in the fourth quarter, and once again, Kyle Shanahan gets away from what you need to do to play winning football and gives the Chiefs a chance in life to come back into this game. And giving the Chiefs life is probably the worst thing you can do, probably the most dangerous team in the NFL as far as being able to score quick, to score on a dime and be able to get themselves back in this game. And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, I think you're placing a little bit too much blame on Kyle Shanahan because, Jimmy Garoppolo had opportunities. Like that deep ball that they had to Emmanuel Sanders, he was open. Jimmy Garoppolo just missed the throw. And, he makes that throw. That's a touchdown. They were talking about a whole different situation here about, oh, my God, what a genius ballsy move that was. And, the play was there. The play was there. You just got to make the throw. And in that situation. And I think to say it's all Shanahan's fault is taking away from how incredible Kansas City's defense was in the fourth quarter, because Chris Jones just single-handedly took over in the fourth quarter. He was batting balls, just making plays in the running game. I think it was an overall effort. The defense of Kansas City had decided that they were going to get them back in this game. They knew they just needed to give Mahomes more opportunities. And that's what they were doing. So I think maybe you can criticize Shanahan on some decisions, but I think there's more to that than him just making poor calls in those situations.
Yeah, Garoppolo definitely missed some throws. If he makes that throw to Emmanuel Sanders, the game's over. But it just seemed like San Francisco was kind of just playing with the lead, and they didn't really. Before that play, they were kind of just sitting back, and Kansas City they were allowing Kansas City to come back in that game, and you could tell that the momentum had just shifted when Kansas City scored that first touchdown to start the fourth quarter with Travis Kelce. I felt to myself, okay, now this is interesting. Now, the Chiefs are still up, but the Niners are still up, but. Man, I've seen this story before, and and it happened. But what were your thoughts on Mahomes being awarded the MVP of the game? Do you think that he deserved it, or do you think that somebody else maybe kind of got the shaft and they just kind of decided to give it to the quarterback that's always the sexy pick?
It's the way it's gone in college football and the NFL with the Heisman and like MVP respectively. To get someone to win the MVP who is not the quarterback is pretty much impossible now. And it's because they're the most important position on the team, and where they go, the team goes, and all these things. But I personally thought Damian Williams should have got it. He was unbelievable in the game, especially closing it out in the fourth quarter. Just taking those huge chunks, allowing to run out the clock, and then getting that big touchdown in the end that was the nail in the coffin. So for me personally, I thought Damian Williams should have got it because Mahomes, yeah, he made the plays at the end that he needed to, but if he wasn't in a position to make those plays at the end, if the defense hadn't kept it that close, it doesn't matter if he makes those plays at the end, because if San Francisco turns those interceptions, which were awful interceptions. It wasn't like there was an amazing defensive play. Like that one that he threw right in the middle to the linebacker there, you can see from the beginning of the play, if you're watching, Warner just dropped exactly in that spot and was just waiting for it. And even if Tyreek Hill sat it down like he was supposed to, because they said he overran it a little bit, it didn't matter. Fred Warner was in front of him anyway. So, if they turn those into touchdowns, and we're talking about, Mahomes cracked in the big game and what have you, but because he made the plays at the end and he gutted out his performance and ended up winning, he's going to get the nod.
I agree with the Damian Williams point. He ran for 104 yards on 17 carries, had the nail in the final, nail in the coffin touchdown there to seal the game. And like you said about Mahomes, he didn't have a great game. We were talking about it on the preview show where we thought this was going to be, we thought he was at least going to get over 300 yards. He finished with 286, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But I look back to that one play in the game that probably sealed the deal for his MVP the MVP being awarded to him was that the one play where he was able to extend the play with his legs. The pocket had collapsed. He was escaping to his right, and then waited for Tyreek Hill to kind of get open on the left side and just slung it down the field, and somehow found Tyreek Hill on that one huge play on third down that extended the drive for Kansas City and got them back in the game. That play right there, I think, was the play that the snapshot of what you can say, okay, Patrick Mahomes took back over this game, and that's what got him to that MVP status.
Yeah, see, but like, I feel like we all get caught up in like seeing the big play, but like he should make that play, you know? Tyreek Hill's wide open. I know he extended the play, which is his talent, but we all know Patrick Mahomes has a cannon. He should hit a guy who's wide open down the field, you know? And I think he's always doing amazing things. So something like that, to me, by his standards, I don't think is an MVP-like play. I mean, like, you expect someone to do that, you know? Like, some of his runs down low whenever he was near the end zone and taking some of those hits, that to me is showing like MVP-level play where you're gutting it out in the biggest game of your life. You're taking these hits. You're putting it all out on the line for your team. That stuff, you know. But I don't know if it's just because I'm just used to him making those plays, so I don't see them being exceptional that if he continues to make those plays.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that we expect it from Mahomes, but we can't take away from how, you know, rare those are seen. Like, it reminds me of like Aaron Rodgers in his prime, where he would make these plays on third and fourth down where the game's on the line, and, you know, just sling these balls for completions. But I mean, at that point in the game, if Kansas City doesn't convert on that play, San Francisco has probably a even higher chance of winning that game. Kansas City doesn't end up scoring that touchdown, and the game, and you know, we can say it now, but it might have been over at that point if Mahomes isn't able to make that play and make that throw to Tyreek Hill, extending the play that clearly was not the play that was supposed to happen, and he had to break out to his right and throw it back across his body to the left, which we all know Brett Favre style is not what you're supposed to. It's unconventional. What you're not supposed to do as a quarterback. You're not taught to do anything like that. But he was able to make that throw, and he made it work. And I just feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm just caught up in the Mahomes hype after this, but I feel like that was just an unbelievable play that I think was why they awarded him the MVP, because you're the quarterback, you're the leader, you're so quote unquote leader of the team, and not giving it to the running back kind of isn't the most glamorous person to be given it to. Just like how we saw the Rookie of the Year award go to Kyler Murray, which I thought was completely ridiculous. The fact that A.J. Brown and Josh Jacobs from your now Vegas Raiders were clearly better rookies that year, but because Kyler Murray's the number one pick, the quarterback, you know, it just seemed like the quarterbacks are always given more. They're always given the benefit of the doubt, and more times than not, they kind of overshadow the other positions that may have even had a better game than them, but because of the quarterback, they kind of that kind of trumps the rest of the wide receivers or the running backs in that situation.
Yeah, see, I feel like there's a better argument to be made for Mahomes winning the Super Bowl MVP than there is for Kyler Murray winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. Josh Jacobs, oh my, how do you not give it to Josh Jacobs in that situation? Like,
even AJ Brown
changed the offense for us and was just unbelievable, was easily a top 5 running back in the league last year. Breaking tackles and everything, comes into the league, already looks like a 10-year veteran. And yeah, AJ Brown was unbelievable for the Titans as well. And they're going to go give it to Kyler Murray because, sure, he did very well as a rookie quarterback on a team that wasn't doing so hot. But, I mean, come on.
Exactly, and that's why I think there's that quarterback bias with stuff like that, with giving out awards or the game awards, game MVPs, things like that. I just feel like the quarterbacks, they kind of have an unfair advantage sometimes, and if it's an even playing field, the quarterback's always going to get the nod in that situation.
For sure.
So that's why I feel like Mahomes got it. He did make some great plays, but I agree with you that Damian Williams probably deserved the MVP of that game. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up talking about the Super Bowl here? Anything else you want to mention?
Just that it's going to be scary in the NFL next year. Both these teams are returning a lot of their guys. They're both very young teams with high upside on all their talent. And from what we saw with Kansas City's defense, I mean, it's going to be a scary year next year to have those teams come back.
Yeah, I've been giving Kansas City's defense a lot of flack that year, and they stepped up against the Tennessee Titans, and then stopping Derrick Henry from doing much of anything in that game, and then they shut down San Francisco when they needed to. So the Kansas City Chiefs defense, that's always criticized for having their offense carry their team, I think they stepped up in the biggest moments, and they definitely deserve some credit for that.
Yep, absolutely.
So the Chiefs end up winning the Super Bowl 31-20. We'll see what happens going into next year. The closing odds was Kansas City at -1.5, and the over/under was 54.5. So they did not reach the over, and Kansas City did cover. So if anybody won money on that, or any of the other ridiculous prop bets that you may or may not have taken in throughout the Super Bowl, hope you won some money off of halftime props, and if people made an appearance in the Super Bowl. Or I actually didn't even unfortunately I didn't get to see if Joe Buck and Troy Aikman mentioned the Dallas Cowboys at all during the Super Bowl, but
I will say I do remember. I don't think they did, and I do remember that I won the Gatorade prop bet. So
damn, I was really on that blue Gatorade. I mean, it was the Patriots had just used it the last year, and it was the big underdog. So I was hoping for blue Gatorade, but I don't know how purple was the favorite. I still will never understand.
Yeah, me neither.
So that being said, guys, we're going to take our first commercial break on the show today, and we'll come back and we'll start to discuss some of the stuff that is upcoming, the CBA, the free agency, the franchise tags, and everything like that. So we'll be right back here on Straight to the Extra Point on the Armchair GM Sports Network. The Blue Line Diner is Niagara's leading breakfast restaurant. Great food, great service, and where else can you see one of the NHL's greatest players having coffee and conversation with patrons? Of course, Marcel Dion Inc. is located directly next door, and Marcel is always in and out of the restaurant, talking to the kids and the fans that walk through the doors. Open Tuesday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. 289-296-8785, the Blue Line Diner, located on Montrose Road, Niagara Falls. Simply Fit Health Club, real 24-hour access, 7 days a week. Located at 6595 Drummond Road, Niagara Falls. A clean, modern facility with top-of-the-line equipment, a friendly and non-judgmental environment, free Wi-Fi, ample parking, and more. Come in and tour their facility anytime during their office hours. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, Saturday 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Sunday 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Don't hesitate to stop in. No appointment necessary. They take pride in helping their members reach their health and fitness goals at their convenience and for the best possible price. For only $9.99 bi-weekly, members will get access to the state-of-the-art facility any day, anytime. What are you waiting for? At Simply Fit, there are no excuses, only results. Come see for yourself. 289-296-9535 or info at simplyfithealthclub.com. Simply Fit Health Club. Mick and Angelo's, Niagara Falls' premier sports kitchen and bar. We're all about food, friends, and fun. Catch the game with us and grab a delicious bite to eat while enjoying a cold beer. Bus trips to sporting events, live music performances, and sports pools throughout the year. Open daily 11 a.m. to midnight and 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Mick and Angelo's, Niagara Falls' premier sports kitchen and bar. Canadian Wrestling Figure Store. Check out their website at cwf.ecwid.com for the best selection in Canada for WWE Elites, Basics, and exclusive action figures. Free Canada-wide shipping on any order over $200. Enter the code ARMCHAIR at checkout so they know that we sent you to receive 10% off your order. Once again, that's Canadian Wrestling Figure Store at cwf.ecwid.com. Attention employers! Finding the right candidate to meet your hiring needs requires more than just posting an advertisement and waiting for a suitable candidate to apply. Let the Niagara Employment Help Center save you valuable time and money by making your hiring process easier. Free job postings, fill job vacancies quickly and efficiently, access to a bank of potential employees, reduce employment costs, all candidates will be pre-screened, job trials and placement incentives, and financial assistance may be applicable to offset the cost of training. Again, that's Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls. www.ehc.on.ca. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. Alright guys, welcome back to the second segment of today's Straight to the Extra Point, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Happy and Miklos back with you here. And Miklos, we got some NFL free agency and franchise tag stuff to talk about, but first we actually had some stuff that was just came across our Armchair GM's desk this morning, and we got to talk about that first, which we weren't expecting to talk about, and that is the brand new NFL CBA agreement that has been reached through the 2030 season. This was, I'm using the article from Jack Brown from The Score, which he also got from Mark J. Rabalis of the USA Today. The NFL players voted on approval, the collective bargaining agreement. Players voted, the vote was actually very close, Miklos. The vote was 1,019 to 959 in favor of the 10-year deal, which includes a 17th regular season game, expanded playoff field, and increased share of league revenue for players. So the new CBA rule will change the final year of the previous deal and go into effect immediately. So there was 1 year left on the CBA. This new deal now goes into effect, and that the one that was signed in 2011 is now gone. That last year is no more. And some of the interesting things here: the two-team expansion of the postseason will be implemented for the start of next season. So we will get 2 more playoff teams in, starting for the 2020 campaign, and then the following season in 2021, there will be the 17th game added to the regular season. Additionally, teams will only be able to use one franchise tag or transition tag this offseason. If any new CBA wasn't put in place, both tags would have been available to use. Adam Schefter used the example that the Cowboys could have used both on Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott for that scenario. But the owner signed off on the proposed deal February 20th, and the deadline to players to vote was Saturday. And yeah, Miklos, what are you thinking of? Bit down to the increased revenue here. Minimum salaries will increase by 20% immediately and will reach over $1 million for players with less than 1 year of experience by 2030. Game day rosters are now increased from 46 to 48 players, and there will no longer be suspensions for positive marijuana tests. All right. So
wow.
You can go and roll some doobies, I guess. But the player revenue split will be with the league will remain at 47%. Starting in 2021, players receive 48%, and their share could jump as high as 48.8%, depending on new TV deals, which the NFL is set to negotiate. Some players had pushed for a 50-50 revenue split in the return of the 17th game and postseason expansion. So, Miklos, and then it says here, the new league year and free agency are slated to begin Wednesday, but the officials are reportedly skeptical on if the NFL will proceed as planned with the coronavirus pandemic. So, Miklos, what are you thinking of this new CBA from what we've been able to gather from it? It just came across, less than a few hours ago, so we haven't got all the details about it, but we have a pretty good idea of what it looks like. Are you thumbs up or thumbs down on this new CBA?
So just as I've been reading through it, as you said, we just got it, and I saw, so it doesn't, not necessarily 2021 for the 17 game season. Apparently they have from 2021 to 2023 to make the decision for the owners to expand to the 17 game season. I imagine they're going to do it as soon as possible though, so we can probably see it in 2021, but they do have that option. And like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, it's kind of a unique scenario. Like the salary increase, I think, is what tipped the scales and the players saying yes, because I didn't realize that roughly 60% of the NFL operates on minimum salary or close to minimum salary deals. And so those are the ones who are going to be getting this 20% boost. And I mean, a 20% raise from 1 year to the next. I mean, who wouldn't want that? And I think that's what that's what tipped the scales for the yes. But there's a lot of players, especially the players who are earning the most are the ones who are most against it. And, being financially secure allows you to think about other things. They're concerned about the extra game and the toll that takes on their body, and also the extra playoff game and the toll that could take on their body. And it's been unique in the NFL that the players are not on the same page, and that kind of hurts them in these negotiations. As for thumbs up, thumbs down, I think that remains to be seen from me. I still want to see what happens. I'm not a big fan of the extra team in the playoffs. I mean, we already have these 7 and 9 teams that squeak in to the playoffs with the existing system. So adding 2 more teams, we're going to get some awful playoff teams coming in here. And I just don't think that helps the product at all. That's just going to make it's going to make it harder to do well in the playoffs, because teams are going to have a longer road. Only one team's going to get the bye now. So if a team starts running away with it in the playoffs, like the Chiefs wouldn't get the opportunity to get the bye if it was last year. So I don't know how that improves, but I'm always a fan of more football. 17-game season. I mean, they might have to come up with some new things, maybe add another bye week in there or something like that to put down on injuries, or cut down on injuries. But overall, I think I'm waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, you bring up some good points there. I mean, the 2 bye weeks, the NCAA football already does that. So I would be all for giving a teams an extra bye week if we're going to add that 17th game. I'd also like to see the preseason shrunken a little bit. Maybe instead of playing 4 games, they play 2 or 3. We all know that players have said that they don't like the 4-game preseason anyway. So I know for the owners, they want the money that they get from that game, but I think from a regular season game, they'll probably may end up making more money off of it anyway if they get rid of a preseason game or 2. But the other point that you brought up, and I'm drawing a blank right now, but the increased benefits for active and former players. I think that's another big thing that with all the new this CTE and all the other brain injury stuff that's been coming up in the NFL in the last few years, and just in sports in general, with our increased awareness and knowledge of what CTE and brain damage and brain injuries can do to a person later in life, especially in the NFL where it's head-to-head, a helmet-to-helmet contact. I think increasing benefits for active and former players is a big thing for the NFL to take care of their players that play this game. They understand the risks of it, but they should be able to enjoy their life after football as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's lots of pluses and some negatives, which is always going to happen in negotiations. So it's going to be interesting to see. What I have been saying for the last 2 years, which I think really should happen, is they really should do away with preseason games entirely. But those joint practices that they've been doing, if the NFL wants to keep a similar game type scenario, then put those in the stadiums. Put the joint practices in the stadiums, sell tickets to it. People would go nuts. Why wouldn't you want to see your number one wide receiver going against an opposing team's corner when they're doing one-on-ones and they're doing inside run and pass skelly and they're doing plays like that? Players are lower at risk. Teams are still getting the reps in that they need to practice against opposing teams. Practices are always good for a fight, which, I mean, the fans are going to love. And just sell tickets to it like it's a preseason game instead of these ridiculous games that they have where it's just terrible football all around. These joint practices, I think, would be better for everyone. And if you put it in the stadiums, then they'll keep the revenue that I know the Shield is all about.
And that's the thing too, is I think it has to do with, because the NFL, when their rosters start, they start out so huge, and then every week they get cut down and cut down and cut down. So I think it's kind of just, the preseason is more of trying to see what your prospects have, getting your starters in for maybe one series just to keep them fresh. And then it's mostly just guys that are either going to be released or guys that are going to make your practice squad. It's kind of just a showcase for those guys to see if they can even crack an NFL roster or crack an NFL training camp or practice squad is what I'm saying. But now it seems like with the XFL, there seems like another option for these players that might not have had an opportunity if they were to miss out on the NFL after preseason to kind of go anywhere else. But it seems like the XFL has kind of become that alternative league for guys to be able to showcase themselves if they are cut by NFL teams. I know it's in the spring and they have to wait a little bit, but at least there seems to be some sort of football where they can continue to get some tape and teams can continue to see what they're able to do when they're cut from these preseason rosters from the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, because that's the thing, really, all teams need a couple of tune-up sessions to get to see how they're going, even for the starters, maybe a couple of reps in before the regular season starts. And so there is some value to these preseason, but I think that's why switching to the joint practice, you can keep those reps high. You can see these guys showcasing, because they do live plays where they got your offense gets 20 plays against the opposing defense gets or the opposing offense gets 20 plays against your defense in different scenarios. So you do get the reps, you do get to work on stuff, but you get to work in a more controlled setting before going to like live games in week one.
And that's the problem. The NFL, like most leagues, does not have a developmental system. They don't have a minor leagues where, they have a team that they can call players up from, or that they can develop players under. They basically have their practice squad as their small development, and the rest of the guys just, go back to whatever they were doing. They don't have jobs in the NFL, and that's why I like that the XFL is there, but it's still not during the NFL season, which is why
right.
I think it's important to still have a few preseason games for these guys to, like you said, the practices are great, but for them to get a full game experience, they're not going to get that through a practice, and they're not going to get that once they get cut from the NFL roster. So I feel like still having a few preseason games in any sport is still valuable, but I just think the amount of them should definitely be cut down. The 4 is way too much. I'm content with maybe 2 at most.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. 2 or maybe even 1. Having like 2, now the 17 game season, maybe having 2 or 3 big joint practice sessions and then 1 to 2 proper preseason games.
Yeah, it's way too much, and then maybe they can adjust, because every week they were cutting down the rosters each preseason week. So maybe we can just have quicker cuts with these rosters, and the rosters go down quicker if there's only 2 games as opposed to 4, and then these guys are still waiting around to see if they're going to make teams up until the last week of the preseason, and then all of a sudden they wait 4 weeks and then they get cut. It's just, I don't know. I feel like if you cut them earlier, maybe they have a better opportunity to go out and find themselves another job somewhere else.
True. Sounds, yeah. And really, like you said with the developmental league, I mean, the XFL, I feel bad for them, because I feel like maybe not overall, but there was definitely a couple good teams that were showcasing some good players. And to have their season cut short like it was with the whole coronavirus thing, that's obviously unfortunate. But yeah, that is a constant problem with the NFL, and it's where you get into difficulty with the NCAA, where really the NCAA is their minor league, but you can't call players up, and it's not really a true affiliation, or as it is.
And then so many players come out of college, like college pumps out so many players, and a lot of them either don't have the opportunity to play. They move on with a career through their degrees or things like that. But every year the NCAA just pumps out so many players that there's only a certain amount of them that can be taken by the NFL, and the rest of them, they kind of just scatter and fall through the cracks. And I like that the XFL is a nice alternative. I've liked what I've seen from that league. From the games that I've watched, I think they have some interesting rules that the NFL might think to look into, as far as pace of play and things like that, and certain formations. I think I've liked what I've seen from the XFL, and it's a shame that their season had to come short because of coronavirus. But I definitely think they'll be back, and I definitely think that just having these players be able to showcase themselves and have tape for the NFL teams to see what they're still capable of doing, as opposed to just having their college tape from, could go back to 2 or 3 years prior to that, before they even had the opportunity to make an NFL team and weren't successful. I think that just allowing them to have some tape and some game action in meaningful football is going to be key for some of these guys to make their way back into the NFL or back into NFL facilities and practice squads.
For sure. And I mean, perfect evidence of this. I'm just going to go off on a quick tangent for shout out to the Canadian University League. But the reason there is a slight bias in Canadian university football for players out of Quebec is because, and why the teams in Quebec end up being so good is because they have the CEGEP system where you do essentially grade 13 and grade 12 at a CEGEP school, which is kind of like a college before going to university. And so these guys get 2 years of essentially university level football where they're playing and getting the reps before going to a Laval or a Montreal, as opposed to everyone in Ontario who goes straight out of high school to their university and then sits on the bench or doesn't dress for 2 to 3 years and then finally gets to dress after that. And you're not getting game reps during that time. So really you can't improve as quickly as getting those game reps. So I totally get what you're saying. And I'm sure if there was a situation where they could get these game reps in or to have a developmental type league, we would see a huge improvement in these young players coming up as opposed to just the star caliber players.
It all comes down to money at the end of the day, right? Is a developmental league going to be worth it for the owners or commissioners of that league? Like we saw the AAF, that league was pretty good. It was kind of like a developmental league, but it wasn't sustainable as the players weren't being paid on time. Travel expenses, it was an issue, and they ultimately just had to shut down the league. So we've seen stuff like that in the past, but I think the XFL being kind of, they don't want to consider themselves a spring league, but let's be real, they're a spring league. So I think still being able to have players play while the NFL is not going on kind of puts more of a spotlight on these players, because if they were playing during the NFL season, nobody probably would be paying attention to the XFL. So I think the XFL did the right thing by having it in the off season of the NFL. That way it gives these players an opportunity to have the spotlight and have the league as a whole to have more of a spotlight, as opposed to being overshadowed by the NFL and being able to showcase these guys that wouldn't normally be showcased or even known about when they're cut from the NFL.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's what I've been liking about the XFL, and I agree with you about the last thing about the CBA that I want to talk about is the added playoff team, and I know there's going to be an added playoff team for both conferences, and I don't agree with them taking away the second bye, because like you said, we always see 2 teams from each conference getting the bye. And like you said, Kansas City wouldn't have got the bye this year, so who knows how that would have worked out. But only awarding 1 team the bye, I mean, it's definitely going to bring more competition to getting that number 1 seed now, as opposed to just being content with getting the number 2 seed, as it seems like the number 2 seed really doesn't give you that much of an advantage as opposed to what it would be under the old CBA, except for the fact that you'll be playing the worst playoff team most likely to get in, the team that barely is able to claw themselves in. But I don't know, we always see every year in one conference looks way better than the other conference. There's always, one team from one conference getting in with a 7-9 or 8-8 record, where a team that's 10-6 in the other conference misses out on the playoffs. So I don't know, I'm okay with adding the other playoff team, because I think most years we should have more playoff teams in one conference and less in the other conference. But I mean, the only thing that I can think of is when we start just crossing over conferences, and kind of like the CFL, where if a team is better in the West, they make it over a team in the East. I don't know if we can start to get to that level, but I don't know. I'm okay with adding the 2 extra playoff teams, but I do agree that it definitely hurts the second seed, and we definitely will see, a team get in the playoffs that probably, isn't the same caliber level as another team in that same conference. But I do think there are some years where there are a few teams that miss out on the playoffs that definitely deserve to be showcased with at least one playoff game that miss out just because of how tough a division or a conference is in that one season.
Now that crossover idea would be something. Can you imagine 2 NFC teams playing in the Super Bowl because the one came and dominated in the AFC going through? That would be something.
Yeah, I would have liked to seen a team jump over to the NFC East and take over that spot from that team because, I mean, those teams last
For
year
sure.
were just atrocious. But obviously that doesn't matter because we still need to have a division winner host a playoff game, which is a discussion for another day where you have an 11-win team going on the road to play an 8-8 team in the playoffs. But again, that's going to happen. Not every division is going to be dominant, and we always see it every 3 or 4 years where one division wins it at 7-9 or 8-8, and they end up hosting a team that has 2 or 3 more wins than they do. It's how it is some years, and it's not going to happen every year. But the years that it does happen, it gets overblown and people talk about it a lot more. But I don't think it's really that big of an issue in my opinion.
All right, fair enough.
But with that being said, guys, that's the CBA, and obviously we don't have all the details. It was just released a few hours ago, so we're still, waiting for things to trickle in. I did see that the increased 48-man game day roster must include 8 offensive linemen, so that's kind of interesting there. But with that being said, guys, we're going to take our next commercial break on the show today and come back, and we'll discuss some of the franchise tags and the free agent frenzy that's about to happen in the NFL this week, that's scheduled to happen in the NFL, and our thoughts and predictions on that. So we'll be right back here on Straight to the Extra Point on part of the Armchair GM Sports Network. Nestled in the heart of beautiful Ridgeway, Ontario, the Ridge Filmhouse offers up films celebrating diversity, integrity, and pure entertainment. Join us for a quaint movie-going experience complete with an in-house bar, luxury seating, and carefully curated films. Join us for a cinematic experience that focuses on comfort and quality. Our films are carefully selected to fit our specific mandate, screening films that the larger cineplexes won't. Each month, our 10x15 screens show you the best in independent, foreign, classic, and second-run films. The Ridge Filmhouse is also available for private screenings, parties, and festivals. Come and discover hidden gems or rediscover the classics one more time. Located at 320 Ridge Road in Ridgeway, www.ridgefilmhouse.com, or call 289-303-8367 for availability and showtimes. The Ridge Filmhouse, a truly unique movie-going experience. J&L Flooring is a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride in providing elite customer service and support. They are a specialty flooring and decor boutique shop with a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety and truly unique selection of products. All their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel great about your flooring choices. Their goal as a local business is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity, offering unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team. They connect with their customers to simplify the process to make their life easier and to make their homes beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road, Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 905-358-3299 J&L Flooring. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill is located on the top of Clifton Hill and just a 5-minute walk from the majestic Niagara Falls. It is conveniently nestled in the heart of the tourist district. A family-owned and operated business, the Spicy Olive opened its doors in 2003 and has since been established as an authentic and unique Italian restaurant and bar. Its rustic ambiance and time-worn finishing provide a warm and inviting dining experience. Offering an array of delicious dishes, they specialize in authentic Italian cuisine, homemade sauces, fresh ingredients, and consistently provide a strong foundation on which they build their menu. As night falls, the Spicy Olive shifts to a lively lounge where dancing, martinis, and live music come together to make a perfect evening. Let Spicy Olive host your next function, birthday, private event, bridal, or baby shower. For more than 15 years, they have served not only their dedicated locals, but customers from all over the world with authentic Italian food and only the best in live entertainment. Located at 5026 Center Street, just off the historic Clifton Hill in Niagara Falls. They're open daily at noon till 10 p.m. and till 2 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Call 905-371-2323 for reservations and special events. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. All right, guys, welcome back to the next segment of today's Straight to the Extra Point, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Cappy and Miklos here with you. And in the last segment, we went over the new CBA agreement that was agreed upon this morning by the NFL, and we don't have to worry about any upcoming lockout discussions. And we have 10 years more of labor peace, according to SportsCenter. But go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean. It means it's making for excitement going forward because we don't have to worry about these negotiations. It's all about who's going where and what the teams are going to look like coming up for this new season.
No, absolutely. And with that being said, Miklos, we actually have, we're going to discuss free agency and the franchise tag in this segment. We actually have some breaking news here. I'm going to play the intro breaking news for this. As earlier reported by Adam Schefter, the great NFL insider, Calais Campbell has been traded from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Baltimore Ravens for a 2020 fifth-round pick. Campbell will then try to finalize an extension, which is the breaking news here, reported by also another NFL insider, Ian Rappaport. The Ravens and new defensive lineman Calais Campbell are finalizing a 2-year deal worth $27 million, 20 of it being guaranteed in the trade. It is not completed yet, but sounds like it will be. So, Miklos, what do you think of the trade for Calais Campbell by the Ravens and kind of the, seems like, tanking by the Jaguars and Campbell's new extension with the Ravens as well?
So I think for a fifth-round pick, you're getting, I think that's about right to great value for Calais Campbell. I mean, I feel like with the Ravens the last couple of years, I think they got rid of too much leadership on the defensive side of the ball. I know they were trying to blow things up a little bit and change things around, but to lose a CJ Mosley and Terrell Suggs, I know Terrell Suggs is getting older, but there's something to be said about having that leadership value in the locker room. And I know they tried to bring Eric Weddle and then Earl Thomas in to try and bring that in, but I think Calais Campbell, more than just the talent, which he's unbelievably talented, the leadership quality that he brings to the team, I think is going to be a game changer for Baltimore's defense just from having his personality there. So I think that's a great change. I think that's a great pickup for the Ravens. And as for the Jaguars, I mean, what can you say? They've put all in on their defense, and they had the best defense in the NFL just a couple of years ago, but their offense was just so terrible that they couldn't overcome those shortfalls. So I think they're looking to change things up on their roster and look to build to something new in the future.
We also saw the A.J. Bouye trade to the Denver Broncos, which I thought was a very nice ad for the Broncos. And like you said, the Jags just seem to, and from my perspective, in our preview show going into last year, I ate some humble pie here by picking the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they completely made me look like an idiot and let me down completely. I was really high on their defense, and they've basically traded away everything that made that Jacksonville defense scary and a team that almost made it to the Super Bowl a few years ago. Like you said, if they would have had a competent quarterback and a decent offense, revolved around Leonard Fournette, they would have been able to probably make the Super Bowl based on that defense alone. They were just an unbelievable. They were just a threat to score on defense almost every time they were out there. So it was just. It's very unfortunate to see a team basically only have that one season, and we weren't able to see them have 2 or 3 years or even more of being able to see what that dominant defense was capable of, because they were such a fun team to watch on defense with all the weapons that they had. It was basically like a Pro Bowl team on defense is what they had, essentially, with, a practice squad on offense, which, we don't need to discuss again. But I feel like the Jags didn't get enough years out of what that unbelievable defense had been built up to be.
Yeah, and it shows how hard it is to sustain talent and sustain success in the NFL. It can change so quickly, and that defense was generational. It was unbelievable. The talent that they had at every level on the defense, and I mean, if it had Gardner Minshew instead of Mr. Bortles, I think they go to the Super Bowl and we see what happens that year. But I mean, yeah, it's just too many key flaws for them to make it, and then personalities start getting big and things start falling apart. So I think they gotta hopefully not blow it up entirely, but they definitely gotta do some pruning of the roster and allow for some new growth.
I just look at all the defensive players that have now come and gone out of there. You have Jalen Ramsey, AJ Boye, Calais Campbell, just to name a few. It's going to be hard for them to get back to that level when you lose out on those Pro Bowl players.
For sure.
But, so Calais Campbell moves on here to the Baltimore Ravens, and I guess the rich get richer when it comes to the NFL. Is, the Broncos and the Ravens, who historically have great defenses, have now just added 2 more key defensive players to their lineups, with A.J. Boye and Calais Campbell, both from the Jacksonville Jaguars, 4 draft picks. So it seems I saw a tweet a little bit while ago that I laughed that said the Jags are tanking for Trevor Lawrence in 2021. So we'll have to wait and see if that's their real plan or not. But we'll have to see if Nick Foles stays with the team or if he gets cut and they stick with Gardner Minshew. I'm not sure what they're going to do with that, but I guess we'll see in the upcoming days with the Jags. But getting into some franchise tag stuff, we had a few teams that have franchise tagged some players so far. So we had the Baltimore Ravens with linebacker Matthew Judon, the Denver Broncos with safety Justin Simmons, the Jags with Yannick Ngakoue. So at least they were able to hold on to one defensive player, at least for one more year. The Kansas City Chiefs with Chris Jones, who you discussed had a great game in the Super Bowl for the Chiefs and really helped them secure that win on defense. The LA Chargers with tight end Hunter Henry. And lastly, the Washington Redskins with offensive guard Brandon Sheriff. So, Miklos, from those franchise tags that have been discussed already, obviously the franchise tag deadline is tomorrow. So we'll have to wait and see what goes on with that, if it's going to be on schedule or not. But what are you thinking of some of these franchise tags that have happened so far, and maybe ones that you might expect teams to come with that haven't come through yet?
Yeah, I think the franchise tags that we have so far all make sense. Brandon Sheriff for the Redskins is a young, really talented guard. I mean, obviously you want to lock him up long term, but if you can't come to an agreement, next closest thing is got to keep him. Hunter Henry, I see this as kind of like a prove it franchise tag because he's obviously got generational talent. He's just been one of those guys that's unfortunately bitten by the injury bug constantly. So I think they're trying to hold on to him without committing too much. And hopefully he can start playing at the level that he's playing at. Chris Jones, you got to keep him, especially after that Super Bowl performance. I mean, he's just such an integral part to that Kansas City defense. And then same goes for Yannick Ngakoue, young, super talented pass rusher. We'll see what happens now with Calais Campbell gone from the other side. It's just going to be a lot of pressure on him for this upcoming season. And then Matthew Judon, I mean, he is the guy on the Baltimore Ravens defense when in their front seven. So it's important to keep him around. And then Justin Simmons, as far as he couldn't find a deal with him, I don't know if they're just trying to tell they didn't want to commit to a long-term deal, but he's a super talented guy. I'm a huge fan of Justin Simmons. And obviously it's a guy that you want to keep around on your roster.
Any other franchise tags that you're shocked to not see? Maybe some players that haven't been tagged yet that you thought that teams might not risk letting go?
Actually, I'm not surprised. I wasn't expecting as many tags or signings right now because of the CBA. I do expect there to be a run now that the CBA has been signed and everyone knows what framework they're operating under. So I was operating under the opinion, and I'm sure the NFL teams were, that they're not going to commit to any deals if they don't have to until they know what they're working with. So I wasn't surprised that people hadn't been signed yet. Like the Cowboys example are a very big team that people are expecting to be tossing a franchise tag around on either Dak or Amari Cooper. But I think everybody was just kind of waiting to see what happened with these negotiations before deciding where they were going to go.
Yeah, I do. And I can't imagine that the Dallas Cowboys would not place a tag on one of those guys. They can't afford to let one of them walk out the door. I mean, obviously they probably both want to remain Cowboys, but when you have the option to talk to more teams and just, you're able to see what's outside the facility, you always have that unknown factor of if they like what they see, maybe they think that the grass is greener on either side, and they're able to go into other facilities and see what they offer, as opposed to just saying, okay, we're going to stick with you now here. You don't need to go and do any of that. We're going to tag you, and we'll try to work out a deal for one more year. But I just find it shocking that Dak Prescott has not received a long-term deal from the Dallas Cowboys yet, and it kind of seems concerning on the Dak side, as if Jerry Jones wants to commit to Dak Prescott long term, because he's clearly proven that he's able to be the leader of that team the last few years, and he hasn't been able to be given that long-term deal. Ezekiel Elliott got the long-term deal last year, so for Dak Prescott still to not have this deal, it kind of seems like there might be something going on in Dallas, and maybe we can talk, start bringing up the speculation as if, do they really want Dak Prescott as their long-term option or not?
Well, see, I think they do, but even with Ezekiel Elliott, he did get the long-term deal, but keep in mind, they took it right up to the beginning of the season before they did that. So I think there's still lots of time for both sides to be playing here. I know they played all last season with Dak Prescott about whether they're going to sign him or not, and I think the offseason is very young, especially with the CBA just being signed. Mm-hmm. So I think it wouldn't be surprising if this dragged on for several more months before Dak started seeing any action.
Yeah, that's a fair statement to make. For your franchise quarterback, I just don't know if you can allow that to drag on to as long as it did with Ezekiel Elliott, where he's the running back, he's important, but the quarterback is the one that the quarterback needs to be in sync and practicing, and everything needs to come from the quarterback on the offense, essentially. So I don't know if they can allow this to drag out as long as they did with Ezekiel Elliott. I just don't know if that's going to be feasible. But again, like you said, we're still early, but going past Wednesday, he is able to talk to other teams if other teams are interested in him, but we'll have to wait and see if he gets any other offers. But with that being said, Miklos, let's tie this into the betting odds for the NFL QB carousel, and then we'll kind of talk about the other free agents as well. So let's jump right into the NFL free agency discussion. And here are the betting odds from VegasInsider.com for the odds for each quarterback that is on the free agent market this year. Miklos, before we start that, it's a rare year for quarterbacks. There are it seems like there's a lot more talent on quarterback that have become free agents, opposed to years past where we have a lot of these established guys. Obviously, we have Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers, and a couple of these other guys that we don't usually expect to hit free agency at this point in their careers, but we have it in Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady, and then we have some guys like Ryan Tannehill, who had a comeback year with the Tennessee Titans. We have Jameis Winston, who got LASIK surgery, so we'll see if he can turn down his 30 interceptions from last year, but he threw for over 5,000 yards, so a team might be interested in him. Teddy Bridgewater, Nick Foles, if he gets cut, and Andy Dalton, if anybody's interested in his services. But Miklos, what do you think about all these quarterbacks being like these top-end, big name quarterbacks all being free agents at this time?
I think, I don't know why it's not on this betting odds, but Drew Brees is still a free agent, right? Like, I didn't see him.
Yeah, but I think he's already come back and said that when he returns, he's returning to the New Orleans Saints. So I think that's basically put to bed. That's why Teddy Bridgewater, I think, is available as well on this list.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that we have a lot of these franchise quarterbacks, and I think it's because they're all getting to the age where if they're good next year, you wouldn't be surprised, but also next year could be the year that they fall apart and can't perform anymore, right? So now teams are starting to question how much longer they want to invest, and I also think adding to this is the incredibly talented young quarterbacks that are coming in this year's draft, which is also adding to this whole dynamic. And so it's a question of whether teams want to save and put some money into other positions and then sign one of these young studs coming up, or stick with Old Faithful and hope that they can keep pulling it out for another year.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of dominoes with this as well, because once probably Tom Brady is the one to decide where he's going, then the rest of these dominoes will fall, and we'll see, more of these teams that maybe have quarterbacks sign somebody, and then their quarterbacks become available, and we just have, like I said, this huge QB carousel that seems like it might happen in the NFL this year, and it's going to be kind of interesting and weird to see at the same time if we see a lot of these quarterbacks in new places. I think it would be weird to see most of these guys wearing different jerseys next year, but let's get
absolutely.
Let's get into that. So we got Tom Brady, obviously, as the 6-time Super Bowl champion, and the guy that everybody is wanting to see, and wondering if he's going to win another ring somewhere else or if he's going to stay with the New England Patriots. We already heard Joe Montana come out and say that he wishes he wouldn't have left San Francisco to go play for Kansas City at the end of his career, which I thought was an interesting take from one of the all-time great quarterbacks that changed teams at the end of his career. But Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, it seems like there's something going on there. Maybe they're trying to showcase whether they both need each other or if they both can win on their own, because they both have been linked to each other for their whole careers. And it's a kind of a case of, do they believe that they can both win without them to kind of seal their own legacy and not need Tom Brady to be associated with Belichick and Brady being associated with Belichick himself? So what do you think about this whole situation about the Tom Brady's future with New England?
Yeah, I think where people are thinking that the Bill and Tom are getting after each other, it's really because Tom Brady obviously still thinks that he can play, until 45, keeps proving that he can keep doing the things that he's able to do and keep performing at a reasonably high level. Where Bill Belichick is thinking pragmatically. I mean, he's there for the long term. As a coach, he's thinking about the franchise in the future and what can make them great for the next decade. And I think that's where a little bit of the issues start coming in, where Bill is already thinking, it's time for the team, for us to get a new young quarterback and start moving on. And Tom Brady just wants to keep doing what he's doing. I did hear first on the Rich Eisen show about a possible trade of San Francisco trading Jimmy Garoppolo to the Patriots for Tom Brady, or trading Jimmy Garoppolo, to the Patriots and then signing Tom Brady and taking him for the final year, which would be absolute madness. And, the 49ers get the best quarterback to ever play the game of football with this young, unbelievably talented team to go and win a Super Bowl. And Bill Belichick gets the quarterback that he wanted as the heir apparent to Tom Brady, and then they're great again for the next, 10 to 15 years.
Yep. No, absolutely. And it would be interesting to see Garoppolo go back to New England after that whole scenario where it looked like Belichick wanted Garoppolo to be his quarterback, and Tom Brady went above him and went to Robert Kraft and basically forced Bill Belichick's hand to trade Jimmy Garoppolo to the 49ers in the first place. So I think it would be interesting to see that kind of come full circle. And Tom Brady, as we know, was a San Francisco 49ers fan growing up from that area. So him wearing the 49ers colors, I think would be very interesting. Don't know how he would work in a play action type offense, not being the most mobile quarterback at this point in his career, but I think it would be a very interesting piece, and maybe Tom Brady is the piece that the Niners need to go over the hump and win that Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, it's Shanahan's going to gets an unbelievable quarterback. It's a similar offense in terms of lots of movement and different plays that he's used to with Josh McDaniels. So it's I think that would it's probably not going to happen, but that would be a wild thing to happen. It would completely change the landscape of the NFL.
Yep, and before we go any further, we actually have some more breaking news coming through while we're recording, so here we go. The Tennessee Titans and quarterback Ryan Tannehill have agreed to terms on an extension. He is staying in Tennessee. So
that is, I think that's a win-win. Talk about a change of scenery, bringing out the best in a player. I mean, Tannehill was a very average to middling quarterback to, less than ideal quarterback whenever he was playing with the Dolphins, but the renaissance that he has had playing for the Titans has been incredible. And I mean, if they can keep building off that, he's going to be looking at a real nice second half of his career with the Titans.
Yeah, he definitely had a career renaissance with the Titans. This was reported by Ian Rappaport, and apparently he was their priority all along. We had heard talks of them possibly being interested in Tom Brady because of the connection with Mike Vrabel, but I think just the safe bet to go with was Ryan Tannehill. Staying in Tennessee, we saw what he was able to do with them the second half of last season, and I think he's definitely earned this opportunity to have another full season with the Titans and, continue on that trajectory that everybody thought he was going to be on when he was first drafted by the Miami Dolphins. He had a lot of promise coming out of college. He was a highly sought-after talent, so I think he's finally somewhat reaching to that potential, and, it's probably a better option than getting a 43-year-old quarterback who is basically near the end of the road there. So I think Tannehill staying with Tennessee is a great option, and one less person that we have to predict for this show.
Yeah, there you go.
And with going back to Tom Brady here, the odds for him for his services are New England are still the favorites at minus 180. I'm kind of shocked with that. San Francisco is second at plus 600. Tampa Bay is at plus 600. Don't know how that would work. The LA Chargers
don't see that.
LA Chargers at 650. Your Las Vegas Raiders at plus 900, and then now the Tennessee Titans are now washed away. So let's talk about the top 5 options there. New England, the 49ers, the Buccaneers, the Chargers, and the Raiders. What do you think is most likely, Miklos? And are you expecting a huge splash to shock the NFL world? And is Tom Brady leaving New England?
I mean, if this was 5 years ago, I would say, nah, big splash isn't happening. But the one thing I am so happy about in the last 5 years or so is the NFL has had these big splashes happening. So I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibility. And especially John Gruden loves his veteran established quarterbacks. He loves always kicking the tires on quarterbacks. So I think the Raiders are, as much as I wouldn't be the biggest fan of that. I mean, we're talking about a rental quarterback here for a team that is not nearly as established as Tom Brady would probably want in his last couple of years in the NFL. There's still lots of work to be done with that roster. So I think that's an option that Gruden will definitely try hard to bring Tom Brady there. I think the Patriots are the safest bet. As an established system, he's probably going to use the leverage to try and get some upgrades around the rest of the roster to get him a better supporting cast. And then the Buccaneers, I don't understand at all how they're up there. I don't see that being a thing. And then 49ers, if we're talking splash, which I would love to see, I would love to see the Jimmy Garoppolo traded to the Patriots for, some draft picks or something, and then signing Tom Brady would be incredibly wild.
It would be interesting, but for San Francisco's point of view, how many years do they think they're going to get out of Tom Brady? And then, now they're searching for their quarterback once again. But again, I guess quarterbacks coming out of college are more NFL ready than they ever were before. So I guess it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that they can then just go ahead and draft another franchise quarterback that can, learn behind Tom Brady. We'll have to wait and see about that. But I do think he's going to a warm weather city if he leaves New England, because obviously his wife being a model and, wanting to live in they don't want to live in, the cold New England and, live in cold New England anymore if they are planning to move out of there. So I think they do go to a warm weather climate just because of where they're at as a family at this point in his career. We saw Phillip Rivers also sell his house in San Diego / Los Angeles, whatever you want to call it, and he's now living in Florida. So take that for as you wish. But if Tom Brady leaves New England, definitely going to go to a warmer climate than Foxborough, that's for sure. But
yeah.
So make a prediction here. Where do you think he's going?
If I'm going to make a prediction, probably returning to New England, I think. Okay.
I'm going off on a limb here. I'm saying the Los Angeles Chargers, Miklos. I think the Chargers, we've seen what the Chargers have and haven't been in past years with what they were lacking with Phillip Rivers. He wasn't able to get them over the hump. You bring in a quarterback like Tom Brady, who has won 6 championships and has that clutch ability. We always know the Chargers have so much talent, and they just can never get over the hump. I think if the 49ers aren't an option, I think the Chargers have the most talent around their offense for Brady to go in there and already be ready to go with a high-powered offense and be able to make plays with those guys. I don't know. I think the Chargers, them moving on from Phillip Rivers, they want an upgrade, and they want to have somebody that can get them over that hump with all the talent that they always have on the team, and they can't ever do anything with it. So for me, if I'm saying if Brady doesn't go back to New England, I'm saying he goes to the Los Angeles Chargers.
All right.
I do think the Raiders are a very interesting option as well, moving into obviously that brand new, beautiful facility in Las Vegas. That would be huge money for them to get somebody like Tom Brady. I can already see, just the Brady jerseys going off the shelves in Las Vegas and opening a brand new stadium with bringing in Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, to open up a new stadium in a new city. I think it would obviously be like the best case scenario for a team like the Raiders. But I don't know if you'd be okay with that. Losing out on Derek Carr. Obviously, he would then have to be dealt to somewhere. But I think there's a lot of interesting options here for Tom Brady, and options that he's never had during his whole career, that he's always kind of just been linked to New England. And I think now that he's able to kind of get out there and see what else is out there, and I think he ultimately goes back to New England. But if there is another option out there, I think he'll take it and kind of try to prove that he can win a championship without having the great Bill Belichick as his head coach.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said about wanting to go prove that you can do things out on your own. But I don't know. Ultimately, I think I like the Chargers idea. Also makes sense if he's leaving. I can definitely see that. With the Raiders, I just don't see. Other than it would be great for the Raiders in terms of selling tickets, coming to a new city and everything, but I just don't see how that makes sense for Tom Brady. We're not ready to contend for a Super Bowl yet. He was complaining about the lack of supporting cast in New England. Well, I don't know what he's going to be thinking about a supporting cast in Oakland. So other than Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs, I mean, the wide receiving core definitely needs to be remade. So, it's going to be I think the Raiders are the flashy choice, but I don't think they're a very realistic choice.
Okay, that's fair. It just seems like we've always seen in the past where Brady and the Patriots wanted Brady back, but at this point it kind of brings up questions of if they do they want him back, because would this have dragged out this long if they really wanted them back, or is this kind of a case of where Brady just wants to be compensated for all those years that he was taking pay cuts to stay with New England and allow them to compete in other areas?
Right.
So we're both staying with Tom Brady stays with New England, but if he does move, Miklos has him going to San Francisco. I have him going to the Los Angeles Chargers, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with the 6-time Super Bowl champion. Moving on here, we've got Phillip Rivers, obviously moving on from the Los Angeles Chargers. He will not be back with them, so they are not even an option on this list. The favorite right now is actually the Indianapolis Colts, Miklos, at plus 180, even though he had just moved his family down to Florida. Does he want to go back up and play in the cold of Indianapolis? Another interesting number 2 on the list is no team / retired. So Phillip Rivers might straight up retire. Is in second right now at plus 430. Your Las Vegas Raiders are third at plus 750, along with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at plus 750. And then it's a huge long drop off to the Chicago Bears and the Miami Dolphins. So for the sake of this show, we'll say the top 4 are the Colts, retired, Vegas, or Tampa Bay. What do you think are the most viable option for Phillip Rivers at this point in his career?
I mean, based on what happened last season, as much as it wouldn't be a great way to end what has been really a fantastic career, I think it makes sense for Phillip Rivers to hang them up. I mean, sure, the Colts could take him, but I don't see, based on how he played last year, how he's going to be that much an improvement over Jacoby Brissett, who I know they went 7-9 with, but I mean, we're talking about Rivers, who threw 20 interceptions last year, which is ridiculous. And they ended up 5-11, which was worse than the Colts. And I mean, I don't see how he improves the Colts team that much. The Raiders, I don't see them wanting Phillip Rivers after that. And he has had an incredible career, a very unlucky career, considering how talented and impressive he has been. He hasn't even played in a Super Bowl, much less won one. But I think I don't see what team would want to sign Phillip at this point in his career, based on how his trajectory has been going the last couple of years.
Yeah, and with all that talent that's been around him with the LA Chargers, it just seems like he's never able to get over that hump. We never question Phillip Rivers as a competitor. Sometimes we've seen in the past where, you know, his mental state can get out of hand sometimes on the field, and he can get very frustrated, and things can unravel for him. But nobody ever questions that he gave everything that he had on the field for the Chargers all those years, and definitely one of the all-time great Chargers, despite not being able to get them over that hump. But I think the fact that his family moved to Florida, the Colts being the clear option here, like you said, I don't know if it's that big of an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett. At this point in Rivers' career, maybe if it was like 5 or, you know, even 8 years ago, maybe I would say, okay, yeah, Rivers is definitely an option for the Colts. But as much as I don't want to see it, because I feel like he would do pretty well with them, I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are an interesting option for Phillip Rivers here. I mean, Bruce Arians, we know how much he loves quarterbacks, and we all know that the relationship that he has with Jameis Winston is, you know, hit or miss. Jameis Winston obviously being a great passer to both teams, throwing 30 interceptions last year, but throwing for over 5,000 yards. But I think Tampa Bay is looking for a more stable option at this point, not somebody that is going to, you know, lose them games like that. And I think Arians has kind of been frustrated with Jameis's development. I think it would just be best for both sides to move on. Jameis can find a new home somewhere else, and, you know, maybe Phillip Rivers can go down there to Tampa Bay and kind of stabilize things a little bit more than what they've had with Jameis Winston. I mean, 20 interceptions is better than 30, Miklos, so they would upgrade in that scenario. And I think Arians and Rivers, I think they could definitely make some noise there in a very difficult NFC South. There you have the Falcons, and the Saints, along with the Panthers, who are kind of in a rebuilding phase now. But I don't know. I feel like Phillip Rivers to Tampa Bay just seems like everything's kind of aligning for that with what's going on with his new move to Florida, and with the Jameis Winston situation where it might just come to an end, where it's kind of like the breakup that's already been announced, but you know, they haven't made it official yet. I just kind of feel like that's where Tampa Bay and Jameis Winston are going at this point. So I think Tampa might sign Phillip Rivers and then draft a quarterback to kind of groom under Rivers until, you know, he hangs up the boots in a year or two, or who knows how long that's going to be. But I think Tampa Bay needs to look for a new franchise quarterback, and Rivers is a good stopgap for them at this point in time.
Yeah, see, I mean, the thing is, though, it's not like Winston didn't perform. I mean, he led the league in yards last year, and it's well known that Arians' system is prone to quarterbacks throwing a lot of interceptions in their first year. I think it's quick to cut ties with Jameis Winston if you're the Buccaneers. I mean, if he even cuts it down to like if he only throws 20, or cuts it in half and only throws 15 interceptions next year, but keeps the offensive production going, they're looking at a completely different team on the season. I think it's worth giving another look, especially considering how young Winston is, as opposed to just getting an older quarterback to try and fill in a stopgap, and then you're going to be looking for a young guy again in a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point to make. From what I've been seeing on NFL Network, and obviously, you know, the media likes to, you know, swirl things around that, you know, just to get views and things like that. But it seems like the Arians and Winston, you know, scenario might be something that that just might be best if both sides part from it. And Tampa Bay obviously they have not committed to Jameis Winston long term, and not shown that they want to commit to him long term yet. So if he does go back there, I'm not really sure, you know, how that situation is going to work with Winston not having a long term contract with the team, and if that's just going to be a black cloud hanging over the head of the organization as a whole, with them, you know, in their quarterback situation. So I don't know. I just feel like Phillip Rivers gives them a more stable option at this point. And like you said, Rivers can still sling it, and he's going to throw interceptions, but Arians is okay with that as long as it's not almost as many interceptions as it is touchdowns. And I just think Phillip Rivers in a new situation down in Florida, it just, to me, I'm honed in on that scenario. And if Winston is gone from Tampa Bay, I think Rivers is going to be their guy.
Sure.
And what do you think of the Colts being the favorites for that? I know you touched on it a little bit, but do you think that's going to be a possibility, or do you think retirement is a more of a better option at this point?
I don't know. I still feel that retirement is more likely than going to the Colts. I mean, everyone keeps talking about the Colts wanting to upgrade. I mean, I don't think Jacoby Brissett was bad, but I think there's other options that they can go with. Like, I think Teddy Bridgewater is something that they're going to really want to pursue. I think that would be huge for them. They've got a young, talented roster, and you get Teddy Bridgewater, who is extremely talented, and you get him in there as opposed to one of these old guys who, yes, proven, probably Hall of Famer, but like, I mean, come on, you don't want to be pulling in like a 38-plus-year-old quarterback with this young franchise if you have younger options out there.
No, I agree with that, and I think Brissett deserves another year as well. I don't know if he really did that bad with the Colts for what they were doing last year, having to move on from Andrew Luck kind of just out of the blue like that. So
for sure,
I think Brissett another year there would be I'd be okay with that. Moving on, we've got Andy Dalton. Right now, the favorite for his services, as he's probably going to be moving on from Cincinnati, as they'll be drafting Joe Burrow number 1 overall and finally getting a franchise-esque quarterback that has high-end skill. Andy Dalton, pretty decent quarterback. You know what you're going to get from him. He's not going to be a guy that's going to put the team on his back and be a Patrick Mahomes-type quarterback, but he's still a serviceable quarterback at this point in his career. Chicago Bears are actually the favorite at plus 270, which I find interesting with their whole Mitch Trubisky experiment that hasn't gone so well. The Colts are second at plus 450, along with the New England Patriots as an interesting option there at plus 450. And then the Miami Dolphins and Tampa Bay Buccaneers at plus 600, along with the Los Angeles Chargers and Las Vegas Raiders. So where are you thinking Andy Dalton ends up, Miklos?
I gotta say that Chicago Bears I find very intriguing. I think Andy Dalton is a lot better than people have given him credit for. I think he was in just a tough spot with the organization in Cincinnati, especially with having Marvin Lewis there for that long. And, Marvin Lewis, a good coach, but not great coach, and I think that that definitely hurt him. I think him going to Chicago would be extremely interesting. Giving Mitch Trubisky some competition, I think he could really succeed there. I think he's a guy who would really, like Ryan Tannehill, have an absolute renaissance in a new team. I also think him to the Colts, that's another option. Him to the Colts as well, I think also a great option. And then, I think he's someone who really just needs a change of scenery to show how good he can be. So I think Colts or Chicago, both very interesting options. I don't see him going to the Dolphins. Dolphins are getting their guy in the draft, much like the Bengals are getting their guy in the draft. And there's just too much talent in the draft to be just bringing someone like Andy Dalton, who's a proven starter and I think a good NFL starter, to bring him in to be your pseudo competition to your young guy that they can quote unquote sit behind for a year.
Yeah, I think Chicago and Indianapolis are definitely the better options there. New England, there's still too many unknowns with New England. If he goes to San Francisco, does Jimmy Garoppolo go back to New England? There's just too many dominoes to fall with that to say that Andy Dalton to New England would be an option. I mean, it could happen if the deck falls right where Tom Brady goes to a spot not named San Francisco and doesn't go back to New England, but there's too many ifs with that one. So I think the Bears is definitely a good option for him. We know what Mitch Trubisky is and isn't, and it's unfortunate because they took him so high in the draft over guys like Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, which I think they'll be kicking themselves for years because of that one. But
for sure.
Dalton with the Colts, again, I'm willing to give Brissett another year to see what he can do. So I'm honed in on the Chicago Bears option. I think it's almost a perfect fit for Andy Dalton and a perfect fit for the Chicago Bears as somebody that they need to kind of stabilize their quarterback position.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think, it's really tough with the Mitch Trubisky situation, but I don't think he's been given opportunities, and there's just things that he seems to be good in some situations, and then he seems to regress, and it's just you got to stop making these mistakes or start making some plays, And I think having Andy Dalton come in, you get two things. One, you either get Andy Dalton and he starts performing really well, has a renaissance, win, or Mitch Trubisky gets the competition and he steps up to the plate and starts dominating. And I think that's a win-win for the Bears.
Yep. So I'm with you on that. Chicago Bears for Andy Dalton seems like a perfect fit. We do have more breaking news on the contract for Ryan Tannehill with the Tennessee Titans. Miklos, you ready for this one?
Absolutely.
4 years, $118 million extension for Ryan Tannehill. $91 million in total guarantees and $62 million in fully guaranteed money. Wow.
Well, I got to tell you, it's good to be the next quarterback up.
Yeah, if only Marcus Mariota looking at this payday feeling like he got shafted, doesn't he? Or feel like he missed out on a $118 million opportunity for not being able to take the reins of that Titans team. And Tannehill, wow, like what a difference a year makes, going from being a guy that was cut from the Dolphins and let go, then comes into Tennessee, is going to be their backup, ends up taking over the starting job, takes him to the playoffs, takes him to the AFC Championship game, and gets a 4-year extension worth $118 million. Just wow.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing well for himself. We weren't kidding when we said this guy was having a renaissance in his career. It's incredible, yep. And it's good for him. And I mean, everyone can argue about this money and how much they're getting paid, but the thing is, the guy, if you want a guy to be your franchise quarterback, and that's just the way the NFL works. The guy that gets paid the most in the NFL is the next guy due for a pay upgrade. And that's just the way it works. Doesn't matter who it is. If you have a franchise quarterback and you want a franchise quarterback, you got to pay that amount if you want them.
Yep, the deals continue to just leapfrog each other, and the deals just keep going higher and higher. It's not what it was 5 or 6 years ago. The salary you're going to get. It's just each quarterback's going to start one-upping each other with these deals, and that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got 3 more left here. Quickly go through. We got Jameis Winston. Will he return to Tampa Bay or not? I personally don't think he will, but according to the betting odds, it has Winston as the favorite going back to Tampa Bay. Then the Bears and the Dolphins at plus 600, the Chargers at plus 950, along with the New England Patriots. So, what do you? I think you're on Jameis Winston returning to Tampa Bay, Miklos. Are you not?
Yeah, I don't see him leaving, and so I really don't see why. Especially, it's a new year and a new system. And he did offensively. I know the turnovers were egregious, but I mean, offensively, he did perform extremely well. So I don't think you cut ties just yet.
From my prediction, if I believe that New England re-signs Tom Brady and he doesn't go to the LA Chargers, and if Winston doesn't get re-signed by Tampa Bay, I think the LA Chargers would be a nice spot for him. There with Anthony Lynn, with a lot of weapons, just like he has in Tampa Bay. Maybe a trip out west would do some good for him. I know he got LASIK surgery this offseason, so we'll see how that works. But I think Winston in a Chargers system where they kind of have the whole team just already ready to go for him, maybe more of a, they're more of a ready team to compete at a high level for the playoffs than the Tampa Bay is at this point, I think. So I'm looking at the Chargers as an option for Jameis Winston if Tampa Bay doesn't re-sign him. I think the Chargers, with all their weapons as well, he'd still be able to sling the ball around. And they would be, I think Winston on the Chargers would definitely be intriguing.
Sure, absolutely it would.
So I'm going with Winston to the Chargers if he doesn't get re-signed by Tampa, and if Tom Brady doesn't end up going to the Chargers and he stays with New England. So we've got 2 left here, which are kind of backup quarterbacks at this point, but it's kind of interesting. Teddy Bridgewater, that you discussed earlier. Drew Brees will be back with the New Orleans Saints next year, as reported earlier this offseason. If things change, wow, can't believe that the Brees would leave New Orleans, but it seems like for all intents and purposes he wants to be back, and the Saints want him back. So let's just say Brees is back with the New Orleans Saints, and Teddy Bridgewater's on the market right now. The Saints are actually the number one option to bring him back as the backup at plus 200. Then the Dolphins at plus 300, Bears at plus 340, and the Buccaneers at 380. Miklos, what are you looking here for Teddy Bridgewater? And the Colts at plus 600 too, that you had already discussed as well.
Yeah, the situation the Saints have is the situation that everyone in the NFL always wants. You want a situation where you're like, I don't know which good quarterback I want to go with. I mean, ideally, if I was the Saints, I know it's so hard to say, but I would be moving on from Drew Brees and starting the Teddy Bridgewater era. I mean, Drew Brees, he is unbelievable. First ballot Hall of Famer without question. The guy is one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play the game of football, but it's nearing the end of the era, and he hasn't been able to get over the hump the last couple of years with an uber talented Saints roster. And I just think it's time to move on, and it's time to let Teddy Bridgewater take the reins, who showed he can more than handle it in filling in for Drew Brees temporarily last year when he was unbelievable. If Teddy Bridgewater wants the best situation, it's a team where he knows things. I think it'd be wise to go back, even if it's a little bit of a pay cut, because you know Drew Brees is going, but it's about how long you want to sit on the bench. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater showed he can take the reins, and there's teams out there that are, I mean, the Bears. Oh my God! If we're talking about a competition between between Andy Dalton and Mitch Trubisky, Teddy Bridgewater walks in, that's his team right away, and oh my God, I would love to see the things Matt Nagy draws up with Teddy Bridgewater under center there with the Bears. And I mean, you also got to consider that the Saints still have Taysom Hill there, who, I mean, as much as he's a jack of all trades, he is and always says that he's a quarterback first. So, I mean, it's an interesting situation they got going on there. And I mean, as much as it's a long shot, why wouldn't Bill Belichick? I would not put it over him to just, hey, Tom Brady's leaving. All right, we're going to bring Teddy Bridgewater in here, proven quarterback, and start dominating with Teddy.
Yeah, I would like to see Bridgewater remain with the New Orleans Saints and kind of, you know, Breeze, he doesn't have many years left, so they're going to be looking for their quarterback. They like Bridgewater. They like him in their system. They liked what he did when Breeze was on the shelf last year, so I think that's the best option for Bridgewater to remain with New Orleans Saints, although it would be interesting to see Chicago with Teddy Bridgewater, but I think that Andy Dalton option is probably the clear-cut favorite at this point for the Bears.
Yeah.
And moving on here, last one, it's interesting because Nick Foles hasn't been cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars yet, but it looks like Gardner Minshew will be the starting quarterback next year for them at this point. So if he does indeed get cut, the other options are the Dolphins at plus 500, the Bears at plus 650, the Colts at plus 650, the Bucks at plus 900, the Chargers at plus 1,000, and then plus 3,400 going back to the Eagles, I guess, to back up Carson Wentz once again. If Foles is cut by Jacksonville, where do you see him at landing, Miklos, with the options there?
You know, Foles is. I feel so bad for this guy. He's definitely taken advantage of his opportunities, so I shouldn't feel too bad for him because he's got a Super Bowl ring and an MVP. But I mean, he's kind of always in a situation where it's like, yeah, you're going to be the guy, right? Like, you're going to be the guy, but there's always someone else there that's making it questionable whether he's going to be the guy. I think Jaguars are all in on Gardner Minshew. He showed a lot of stuff. He's a young guy. He's got some good talent. I think they might be all in on him. I don't know what happens with Foles from here because outside of the few times that he was with the Eagles, that's the only time he really showed the unbelievable, unquestionable talent to like win games, especially in those playoff runs. So I don't know what happens to Foles because I don't know how many teams are going to be willing to take an opportunity on a guy who, unbelievably, given where he is in his career, is still an unknown about what he's going to get to the table. Are you going to get to the Super Bowl winning playoff run, Foles, or are you going to get, you know, Nick Foles on the Rams, who was just a disaster while he was there?
Or the Nick Foles on Jacksonville, where he unfortunately got hurt in his first game with the team.
Yeah, exactly.
So, do you think he's staying with the Jags? And if not, where's he going?
I honestly don't know. I can't see the Jaguars. Maybe the Jaguars bring him back if they can bring him back for cheap, but I really think they're going to go with Gardner Minshew. And if he doesn't go back to the Jaguars, then I have no idea where Nick Foles is going to go. He could end up anywhere.
He signed a 4-year, $88 million deal last year, so getting injured in the season opener obviously wasn't ideal for him, and the Jag season just kind of went down the toilet after that. But I don't know. It would be a lot for the Jags, I think, to get away from that Foles contract that they signed. I'm going to say he sticks with them for one more year just to see what goes on, but he might be the backup this year to Gardner Minshew. He might be the highest paid backup in the league, but if he does leave...
Yeah.
Maybe Indianapolis. I don't know. I think this team like the Colts maybe would be interested in a guy like him if they think he's an upgrade over Brissett. I'm not sure, but it would just be tough for me to see him leave Jacksonville after just signing that huge contract.
Yeah, I mean, understandable.
Yeah. So that's it for the QB carousel, guys, and we're going to take our last commercial break on the show today and come back with our final general thoughts on a few of the free agents and wrap up the show. So we'll be right back here on Straight to the Extra Point right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving Italian pizzas made with the freshest, top-quality ingredients. Loaded subs and our famous chicken wings, winners of the 2017 Reader's Choice Awards, and the brand-new recipients of the 2019 Reader's Choice Diamond Award from Niagara this week for Best Pizza in Niagara Falls. Open daily, located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery. 905-374-4400. Debit and credit accepted for both. You've tried the rest. It's time to try us. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano. Attention job seekers. If you're currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls. Free services include resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and check out our available workshops under our events calendar on our website for more details at www.ehc.on.ca. The Niagara Employment Help Center. Marcel Dion Inc. Come in and check out our store and meet Marcel Dion himself. We have wall-to-wall NFL, MLB, and NHL licensed products and all kinds of collectibles. We specialize in autographed sports memorabilia. If you don't see what you're looking for, just ask and we'll find it for you. So next time you need a great gift idea for that sports fanatic in your life, or you need to add to your own collection, come visit us first. You won't be disappointed. 905-357-7678, Marcel Dion Inc. Chippin' Charlie's, it's where the locals go. Fun, friendly, and entertaining staff. You're not just a customer, you're family. Lots of TVs, amazing food, and always a great time. Open daily 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Call 905-371-3428 for inquiries and reservations, located at 8189 Lundy's Lane, Niagara Falls. Chippin' Charlie's, it's where the locals go. Mid-City Motors Niagara, your premium source for pre-owned vehicles. Financing and leasing for all types of credit. Check them out at 4460 Drummond Road, Niagara Falls, or at mcmniagara.com. They are also happy to announce Mid-City Mechanic is now open. They can repair, maintain, and service all makes and models of vehicles. Conveniently located behind Mid-City Motors at Drummond Road and Perkins Street. They will be happy to help you keep your car on the road. 905-371-2277. That's Mid-City Motors and Mid-City Mechanic. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. Alright guys, welcome back to the last segment of today's Straight to the Extra Point, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Happy Miklos back here with you for our first episode of the 2020 NFL calendar. It's been a longer episode for you guys, but we had a lot to discuss with the CBA, free agency, the Super Bowl, and everything else going on. So the episode went a little long today, but a lot of good discussion for you. So lastly, Miklos, let's just quickly go over some of the signings that have happened already. We had the Bills agreeing to a one-year deal with Josh Norman, cornerback formerly of the Washington Redskins and previously with the Carolina Panthers. 1 year, $6 million that with incentives that can reach $8 million. Personally, I think that's a really good deal as McDermott reunites with Josh Norman, who he had with Carolina throughout his Pro Bowl years. And I think it's a 1 year option for the Bills, and they continue to show how they continue to build on that defense, which has become the cornerstone of that team, and bringing in Josh Norman, I think that's only going to help, and it's going to continue to build their other, what else they have around Josh Norman. Obviously, they have Tre'Davious White, who is a all-pro cornerback as well. So I think they're just adding to what is already a dynamic Buffalo Bills defense with Josh Norman, who could possibly get back to being somebody that was an all-pro type of cornerback.
I think that is a ridiculously good signing by the Bills. I mean, Tre'Davious White is the man there, and he's been incredible. And now you're adding a complimentary cornerback like Josh Norman, who maybe isn't at the unbelievable prime that he was, but I don't know how much of an influence that was being on just a garbage Washington organization. No offense to our man Louis Steinhaus out there, but like, let's be real, that organization is a dumpster fire. And and really, it's from the ownership down. That's the problem with Washington. So you don't know how much of his play was influenced by being in that situation. I think going to the Bills is great for him. He's reunited with Sean McDermott, and it's great for the Bills. And they get who's going to be their number 2 cornerback. And really, could you ask for a better number 2 in that situation? My God, that defense just keeps getting better and better. And there's good things looking up for the Bills in the future.
And Levi Wallace is now their 3rd corner. So those 3 corners right there, that might be like the best 1-2-3 punch for corners in the entire NFL.
Yeah, it might be.
So great signing for the Bills. Low risk, 1 year. If it doesn't work out, who cares? You get a guy that could possibly reunite with the head coach or the coach that he had on the defense playing with Carolina that made him that all-pro and got him that huge contract with Washington. So I think that's a fantastic low-risk signing by the Buffalo Bills and could pay off for Josh Norman and the Bills. So I think it's a great fit for him to go to Buffalo.
Absolutely.
Other signings we have. We had a few players cut recently. We had Cordy Glenn cut by the Bengals, Ryan Suckup kicker cut by the Tennessee Titans, along with Delaney Walker. Xavier Rhodes, the cornerback from Minnesota, the All-Pro, was cut by the Minnesota Vikings, along with Linval Joseph, their starting D-tackle. What do you think about these few cuts by the Vikings defense here?
I always think cuts like that are so surprising, but I bet you they probably will get re-signed. It's just to restructure their contract or get them back at a cheaper rate, or maybe they are just ready to move on. But usually, whenever someone like that gets cut, it's usually because they want to restructure their contract, because the contract they're on they're just paying them too much, and so I think that might be the situation that's happening there.
Yeah, it would be unfortunate for the Vikings to lose out on Xavier Rhodes, because he obviously has been a very good cornerback for them for a long time, and somebody who's been a staple on that. When you think of the Vikings defense, you think of Xavier Rhodes. So it'd be weird to see him not on that defense. The Chicago Bears re-signed Danny Trevathan, their linebacker, to a 3-year deal through 2020. What do you think of Danny Trevathan, obviously from his days back in Denver, playing against him twice a year?
I think that's a good call by the Bears. He's a solid will linebacker. He's good in coverage. It's got good mobility, and is just all around leader. Is a good veteran. It's a guy you want to have on the roster if you can have him.
More cuts by the Tennessee Titans, who were clearly making some room to sign Ryan Tannehill, as we saw today. They also cut running back Dion Lewis and linebacker / defensive end Cameron Wake. So 4 players in total were cut by Tennessee yesterday, making some fair amount of money. So we'll have to see if the Titans, what they're going to do with that. They lose out on a couple offensive players and a couple defensive players there. So I don't know, Dion Lewis, he wasn't really used in Tennessee that much. Obviously, Derrick Henry was the cowbell there, and Dion Lewis wasn't even really used in the passing game, I think, as much as they had hoped from back when they saw him in New England. So I don't think it's a big loss there with Dion Lewis. I think they'll find a nice replacement for him. And Cameron Wake obviously has been a great player over his career with the Miami Dolphins, and I just don't know if he has that same level anymore to compete, as a starter in the NFL. I'm not sure.
I feel like a lot of these moves, and we, especially given where we are, I feel like the guys that Tennessee's cutting may not necessarily be long. They might be temporary cuts, again, to save money to sign Tannehill. And Derrick Henry's still out there. So that's got to be, I think, a for sure signing. If you're Tennessee, you've got to bring Derrick Henry back. It was basically your entire offense last year. So they're probably making moves to make money to sign these guys and then taking it from there.
Yeah, franchise tag with Derrick Henry. I don't know if he would be in for that, but with running backs, they want to get their money because obviously they're going to deteriorate in a few years, so they want to be able to get their one big payday, before their decline starts to happen with that position. So I don't necessarily I'm behind Derrick Henry wanting to get his long-term deal. I think he's definitely deserved it.
For sure. Absolutely.
Jimmy Graham has also been cut by the Green Bay Packers as the tight end. Obviously, people had high hopes for Jimmy Graham, thinking that he could get back to what he was with Drew Brees now that he had Aaron Rodgers. He looked good at times, but for the most part was either injury-prone or just non-existent for the Green Bay Packers for whatever reason.
I think people have been looking for Jimmy Graham to get back to being Jimmy Graham with the Saints since he left the Saints. I mean, he really didn't do much with Seattle either, all things considered. So I think, I think that's a smart move by Green Bay moving on from him. He wasn't really used in this new offense, and they're on the up and up, this Green Bay offense. So we'll see what they're doing moving on from here.
Christian Kirksey was cut, the linebacker from the Cleveland Browns, and from your Las Vegas Raiders, Tahir Whitehead, the linebacker, was also cut. What are your thoughts on that?
Kirksey, I mean, he's been a solid guy with the Browns. I don't know if it's a cost-cutting move or what's going on there, if they're just ready to move on and get a new linebacker in his position. Tahir Whitehead was always going to be a stopgap with us. I don't know if he's going to come back. He might come back, but there is some other linebackers out there who we might be able to get for cheaper to fill a similar role, because the Raiders do have 2 first-round picks in this upcoming draft, and with their picking at 11 and 19, and that 19 spot is a spot I'm looking at where we could get a solid linebacker in this year's draft as we continue to upgrade the defense. Obviously, at the 11th pick, I'm looking at us getting one of these outstanding wide receivers that are in this year's draft. But I definitely think we're looking at upgrades in the draft in the linebacker position, and then possibly a cheaper option whenever it comes to linebackers at a free agency.
Yep, so it looks like Whitehead definitely wasn't a long-term option for the Raiders anyway, so they cut ties with him. As well, Fairbairn, the kicker for Houston, has re-signed a 4-year extension, re-signing a kicker for 4 years. I don't know if I necessarily like that, especially at times this year. He was he was pretty inaccurate, but so I guess Houston believes in him enough to sign him to a 4-year contract, so that's that. And Marshall Yanda, the longtime great offensive guard for the Baltimore Ravens, has retired. Miklos, what are your thoughts on Marshall Yanda's career?
First ballot Hall of Famer, unbelievable guard for the Baltimore Ravens, and he will be sorely missed by that team. But congratulations to him on an unbelievable career, and I look forward to his gold jacket speech.
Yeah, that'd be interesting too. A few more re-signs on the lower end. Isaiah Ford, Trent Harris, and Zach Sealer for the Miami Dolphins. Cameron Johnson for the Philadelphia Eagles. Quentin Spain for the Buffalo Bills, their offensive guard. And Tanner Hudson for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, tight end. So a lot of minor end signings there. Nothing really else to report as of yet. Obviously, again, free agency doesn't technically hit until Wednesday. So we'll have to wait and see with a few other moves. I know the Atlanta Falcons re-signed their fullback to a 3-year deal as well. And today, Don Molbach, the center for the Detroit Lions, also re-signed. So with that being said, Miklos, are there any, looking at the top free agent list to end the show here, let me just quickly go down the list and you give me a prediction on where you think they'll end up, or if they'll end up back with their respective teams here. So let's start with, this is again from CBSSports.com. Just give me you don't have to give me an in-depth analysis over it, but just give me your thoughts on where you think they might go. Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys.
But definitely back to the Cowboys.
Chris Jones, defensive lineman for Kansas City.
Well, he's already been franchise tagged, right?
Franchise tagged. I didn't refresh this page. My bad. So yeah, he's franchise tagged. So he's got one more year with the Chiefs, and then we'll see if they give him a long-term deal. He's only 25, so I think they'd be ridiculous not to give him a long-term deal. But we'll have to wait and see.
Absolutely.
With that. Drew Brees has already discussed he'll be back. Tom Brady we've discussed with our QB carousel. AJ Green with the Cincinnati Bengals.
I think it's interesting. I mean, it'd be a great start to Joe Burrow's career to have the great AJ Green there, but he has been injury prone. So I think more likely than not, he's going to return to the Bengals. But it would be interesting to see what happens if he decides to walk.
It's going to be interesting to see if they give, like, what kind of deal they're going to give him. Are they going to give him a massive deal after he missed all of last season, which I kind of feel like they kind of held him out last season because they knew last season they were kind of tanking, so they didn't want to risk AJ Green getting more injured than he needed to be, and he really didn't need to play last year. So I would love to see AJ Green back with the Bengals and finally having somebody like Joe Burrow and giving somebody like Joe Burrow an option like AJ Green. I think they just complement each other really well for a first-time quarterback coming in and having an elite and wide receiver. I think it works out for both parties. So I really hope that AJ Green's back with the Bengals as well. And who day? Shout outs to our buddy Chico Nation from The Score. But Amari Cooper from the Dallas Cowboys.
I think Amari Cooper is in a really tough spot given the unbelievable talent of rookie wide receivers in this draft and the price tag that Amari Cooper is going to demand. I think I don't know if Dallas can afford him, and I don't see if any other team would want to pay for him. So I think he might end up at whatever team misses out on the top tier talent from the draft.
Reunited with the Raiders, Miklos?
I don't see that being likely.
Yeah, probably not. Chris Harris, cornerback for the Denver Broncos.
I think that's a really interesting what's going to happen with Chris Harris. He is still extremely talented, one of the top cornerbacks in the league, and especially with AJ Boye coming into the Broncos, I don't think he's going to be returning to Denver. So it's going to be really interesting to see where he ends up.
Shaquille Barrett, edge rusher for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous if they don't re-sign him based on what he did last year. 19 and a half sacks. And I think it's a bit crazy to think that he'll repeat that level, but pass rushers are a premium in this NFL, and I don't see him being a free agent for very long.
Yeah, I don't think so. And Jadeveon Clowney obviously was traded for by Seattle last year, or acquired by Seattle last year. Do you think he's going anywhere, or he stays with the Seahawks?
I think much like with Shaq Barrett, the Seahawks would be crazy to let a talent like Jadeveon Clowney walk. Although, again, his price tag might be the thing that becomes the sticking point, but I think they really are going to try and return him for next year.
And you were saying all along Khalil Mack was the better player from the draft, so I bet you still love that Khalil Mack ended up working out better than Jadeveon Clowney at this point in his career.
Yeah, I think the numbers speak for themselves.
Shout outs to the UB product, Khalil Mack. We've got Byron Jones, the cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys would be crazy to let him go. He's been a difference maker. He plays safety and corner, and he's a premier talent. And I know the Cowboys are in just a really difficult spot with all these talented guys who are going to demand big price tags. But I still think they need to make an effort to try and bring him back.
And we got a few more defensive players. I'll just throw the four names out at you, and you tell me if you think which one has the bigger chance of leaving. Anthony Harris from Minnesota, Corey Littleton from the Rams, Eric Armstead from the Niners, and Bud Dupree from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do you think all four of those guys are staying? And if not, which one do you think is most likely to move?
This is tough here. Eric Armstead, I think it depends on how much he asks for, because that San Francisco 49ers front seven is very deep. And especially with Dee Ford there and Nick Bosa and DeForest Buckner, I think Eric Armstead could be the odd man out and test the waters of free agency. Corey Littleton, I think he's probably going to return. He, is an every down linebacker for the Rams and has gotten better every year. I think they're going to want to bring him back. Anthony Harris, I think, was a surprise with how good he was on that Vikings defense, and I think they're going to bring him back, all things considered. And then Bud Dupree, it's hard to say. I mean, he's been very solid with the Steelers, and I think they're going to want to bring him back because he knows the system. He's proven there. So I think they're going to want to bring him back, even if he hasn't been as good as billed. So out of those four guys that you mentioned, I think Eric Armstead is the most likely to take a walk and test the waters.
I'm going to say Corey Littleton because I don't know how much money the Rams are going to have to be able to use if they're going to keep Jalen Ramsey or if he's going to walk out the door for nothing after they gave up so much to get him. I know the Rams like to they like to stock up on defense, but to me, Corey Littleton, I don't know if they're going to be able to afford the price tag that he's going to want. So out of those four,
Sure.
as a hot take, I'll say Corey Littleton maybe isn't able to get the Rams to agree to the terms that he wants. I know they want him back, but the price tag might be too much for them to be able to overcome with their cap issues.
Sure.
And lastly, Miklos, is there somebody else on this list that you can just go off the top of your head that you think for sure is moving on from their current team?
Ooh, for sure. Moving on.
Because I have
All
mine.
right.
I have mine. I'll give you mine first. Mine is it's because I have some interest in this team. I think Austin Hooper from the Atlanta Falcons is going to be moving on to a new team. Obviously, the Falcons want to have Austin Hooper back, but the price tag that he wants, I think he wants to be paid like a top 5 tight end, and the Falcons being in their cap situation that they're in, as much as they want Austin Hooper back, and he's a big part of that team, I just don't think they're going to be able to afford the price tag that he wants. And it seems like on social media where he's already come out and said it's a business, it's a business decision, and
Right.
they weren't able to offer him a contract that was fair for him and his agent from their perspective. So I think as much as I'd love to have Austin Hooper back, I just think that he's going to get paid a lot of money by some team. Well deserved. He deserves it, but I don't think the Falcons are going to be able to afford to pay that with how much cap space they have, allotted already into their team. I don't think paying a tight end like Austin Hooper is just viable for where their organization is at right now. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Austin Hooper is going to be the most likely free agent to move here, as much as I'd like to have him back.
See, I think, and I know I don't think it's an unpopular opinion, but I think Melvin Gordon is going to be gone away. I don't think he's going back. I think he's going to go test the waters and see what he can bring to another team out there.
Yeah, the Melvin Gordon situation, I mean, he refused to report when they franchise tagged him, and then, that he came back, and, I mean, they already had Austin Eckler became the starter at that point, and they kind of like what they got out of him, so maybe they don't see Melvin Gordon in their plans, and he's 26, maybe they don't want to give him that long-term contract, and they like Eckler better, and they can go and spend their money in other areas of need. So I could definitely see the Chargers and Melvin Gordon just deciding, hey, let's move on from this situation. Last year wasn't a great scenario for either of us, so maybe it's just time to mutually part ways here.
Exactly.
So Miklos has Melvin Gordon moving. I have Austin Hooper as the most likely free agent to be moving on. Miklos, anything else you want to add before we wrap up the show today? We'll probably be back to recap free agency at some point, when it does get going and we start to get a lot of the signings from these big-time guys, and we'll come back and recap that. But anything else you want to add before we wrap up the first show of the 2020 NFL calendar?
Yeah, I cannot wait for this season to really get going. I'm excited for free agency, excited for the draft, and just can't wait to see what happens. I'm looking for splashes.
Exactly. So Miklos will be back with us for as much NFL coverage as he can, along with being able to juggle his medical career as well. So we appreciate whenever Miklos is able to come on and give us his analysis on the NFL, and it's greatly appreciated. Miklos, always love having you, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I love being on the show.
Yep, you can follow Miklos at Miklos_McMaster, and hopefully he's not ranting about something that the Las Vegas Raiders do in free agency, overpaying for somebody that they shouldn't, but we'll have to wait and see. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode of Straight to the Extra Point right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here from the Niagara region. As always, I'm one of your hosts of Straight to the Extra Point, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter at Kapoots13 with a Canadian Z, and a big thank you to my co-host again, Miklos, for coming on. You can follow him on Twitter at Miklos_McMaster. A big thank you to all of our great sponsors who put us on and support the network, keep the show on the air, and finally to you viewers out there for tuning in and listening along with us for this episode. And once again, this has been Straight to the Extra Point, our NFL 2020 start of the calendar on the Armchair GM Sports Network by sports fans, for sports fans. We'll see you soon, football fans. Enjoy free agency.